Welcome to part 17 of my Procedural Node series in Blender. Today we're going to take a look at creating this simple Procedural Road texture. Like with my other videos, you can completely customize this. You could change the color of any of these lines, the thickness of these lines. You could have a middle section just be two solid lines or a single dotted line if you want. You could also change the road texture itself. I just did kind of a simple noise texture as a placeholder, but you could obviously make it much more complicated. So let's see how I did that. To start out, let's go ahead and hit SZ.2 and enter to size our cube along the Z-axis. Then hit Control A and apply that scale. To make it look a little nicer, let's add a bevel modifier here and change the segments to 5. Then open up this little submenu and shade smooth. I'm going to change this top right screen into my 3D viewport and change this middle into my shader editor. And then let's go ahead and rename this texture Road, just like that. Hit N to get rid of this shelf on the right here. And I'm going to go ahead and get rid of these overlays as well so we can see this a little bit better. Go into rendered mode as well. I'm going to start by creating those lines on the side. I'm just going to call them side lines. I'm not sure if there's an actual name for them. But I'm going to go ahead and bring in a texture coordinate node, make sure it's coming out of object, and I'm going to bring in a separate XYZ, just like this, and place it right there. I'm going to bring in a math node and change this to compare. You move this up a little bit and hit Control Shift D, and that actually duplicates that node while leaving it attached to that X output there. It's kind of useful. I like doing that. Let's go ahead and duplicate this math node, change it back to add. We're going to add these two compares together. So what we want to do is we want to change these two values here. It's going to be at like 0.8 and negative 0.8. And then these epsilon values, we're going to change these to 0.02, just like that. Now we can see those two lines on the side there. I want to make this a little easier to update as well. So I'm going to bring in two value nodes. Just place them right here. Duplicate that guy. We're going to plug these into the top one there. And then these ones are going to be plugged into the epsilons there. And I'm going to change this back to 0.02. And this one's going to be back to 0.8. We can see an issue here. I'm going to actually bring in a math node and put this over one of these and just change it to multiply and change this bottom value to -1. And that just helps, one of these is 0.8 and this one here is -0.8. So now we have them on both sides there. Let's go ahead and rename these value nodes. I'm going to click on this one and hit N. And this one is going to be placement of side lines. And then this one here is going to be width of side lines, just like that. So that helps me just keep track of stuff. If I want to change this around, I can. It's just easier when you have a whole bunch of nodes to label them there. So it's a good habit to get into. So this next step, I'm just going to select the separate XYZ and the two compare nodes. And I'm going to hit Shift D, just bring those down. Just make sure object is plugged into that vector again there. And we are going to create that line in the middle. So I'm going to look at this compare node here. Let's change this top value to 0.03, bring it in a little bit. And I'm going to make this a little skinnier, 0.01 there. So I want this line to be dotted. And I'm going to bring in two math nodes here. And we're going to plug the Y into the top here. This one's going to be multiply, and then I'm going to change this second one to fraction, just like this. So if we see what's going on here, I'm going to change this to 5. We can see these line segments are appearing here. I've used this in a couple different videos. It's just a nice way to get a nice repeating texture, and this 5 controls how many sections there are. If this was plugged into generated, this would be exactly 5 sections, but because we're plugged into object, it's actually more like 10 sections. It should be so. Yeah, anyways, we are going to bring in a color ramp and just change the way that this is distributed a little bit here. I'm going to change this to constant and just bring this white value down to 0.6, just like this. We can see what's happening. We've got these stripes now. And what we're going to do is we're going to multiply that by this compare node. So let's bring in a multiply here. Let's plug that in here. Doesn't really matter which one is into which, but we're going to plug that in. And now we can see we have a dotted white line. We can change the, how long those lines are with this color ramp right here. Yeah, so we can customize a little bit. I'm just going to leave it at 0.6 for now. That looks pretty good. Then we're going to take this bottom compare node here. We're going to add this to this multiply here. So I'm just going to duplicate this add node up here, place that on that line, just like that. And I'm going to get rid of this principled BDSF here for now. I'll probably bring it back eventually, but we don't need it for now. So I'm going to add this here, and let's change these values. So this should be 0.03, and this should be 0.01. It should be negative 0.03 rather. Just like that. So now I've got these two lines in the middle. Let's go ahead and set up these value nodes as well. Same way we did the other one. Just going to duplicate this. We're going to plug this one into here, this one into here, and this one into the epsilons, just like this. We're going to change this value right here. Let's zoom in a little bit. We're going to change this value to, 0.03, and then this one here to 0.01, just like that. Then we're going to have to bring in one more math node and place it on one of these here, and we're going to change this to multiply and change that to -1, just like that. Let's put it to here. That way we have the same setup we had before. But make a note of that. If you wanted to change the side of the dotted line, just take this multiply off and put it on the other noodle there for that value node. Let's go ahead and rename these as well. This is going to be the width of center line. Nope, sorry, placement of center line. And this is going to be the width of the center line. Let's bring one more value node in here as well to control the length of these dotted lines. I'm going to set this at 5, which is what it was before. Let's just change that to length of dotted lines. And now we can change this around however we want. So let's go ahead and bring in a color ramp for this top area here. So we want a couple different colors here. I'm going to change this this bottom area is going to be black, but this top area here, I'm going to make this kind of an off gray color. Let's try 0.7 and see how that works. I'm going to bring in a few more math nodes here. They're just going to be some adds. So I'm going to set these up just like this. And so this add is going to go into the bottom of this one and the bottom of this one. And this add is going to go into the top of this one. So let's look at what these are doing. So this one here is giving us just all white areas there. This, however, is not quite white. That's controlled by this color here. So if I turn this down, it gets blacker. I'm going to leave that again at about 0.7 there. And this one here is just, it should be all white. So that's just normal before that color ramp influence. So we've got these two added nodes here. I'm going to put a color ramp into this top one here because we're going to create some colors here. So I'm going to add a third one in here. This black is going to stay at the bottom. This middle one, I'm going to change this to white. And then this third one, I'm going to change this to my yellow kind of middle of the road lines there. Let's see how that looks. Yeah, there we go. So we could change this one here and just watch what happens. If I change this to, more white, then everything turns yellow. And if I bring this down, it just turns a bit gray. So I find that if I'm around 0.7 or so, it looks nice and white. It might be a little gray, but that's close enough anyways. So lastly, let's give our road some texture here. I'm going to bring in a noise texture and go ahead and hit Control T and plug this into object there. I'm going to bring in a color ramp and place this right afterwards. Let's run the factor into there and let's see what's going on. I'm going to turn this scale up to 50, so quite high, and then I'm going to bring this black value up to 0.46, and then this white is going to be down to 0.83. I'm going to bring one more color ramp in here afterwards and just set up some colors really quick for our road texture there. The black is going to be at 0.5, and then I'm going to bring this white down to 0.61, then change it to kind of a dark gray color. Doesn't matter too much what, but I'm just going to go on the lower end of the spectrum. Just almost black, but not quite black. Last step, we want to bring in a mix RGB and place this right here, move this over a little bit. And so this one right here where it's black and white, this is going to be our mask for the factor on this mix RGB. So I'm going to plug this right in here. This yellow here is going to be where this white is, so we want to plug this into the bottom socket of the mix RGB. And then this black, this road texture, we want that to be where this black is, so we're going to plug this into the top there. just like that. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, looking pretty good. We're pretty much done. All I'm going to do is bring in a principled BSF, plug this in here, make sure that that preview is working properly. I'm going to crank up the roughness because there's not a lot of shininess on asphalt roads. So that's it. Hope you were able to see what I was doing, and hope you can see how you might change it around. Try to do most of these value nodes where you would change the settings of this road, but obviously you could change a lot more than that. Thanks a lot for watching.